What if the feminine was never meant to be controlled, only remembered and respected? In this episode of Reproductive Rebel, I am joined by master healer Megan Edge, and we explore why the patriarchy has feared feminine power for centuries. We talk about what the feminine holds in her body, her cycles, and her intuition, and why that wisdom has been suppressed, regulated, and dismissed. It isn't about blaming the masculine. It's about healing the wound created when the feminine was silenced. If you've ever felt disconnected from your body or taught not to trust your inner knowing, this conversation will change the way that you see power forever. Hi, I'm Adrienne Irizarry. I'm an East Asian medicine practitioner who is passionate about women's health and helping women to live their best lives. My goal is to put you in the driver's seat of your health, offering holistic solutions for a symptom-free life. Statements made in this program are for educational purposes only and not intended as a substitution for medical consultation or advice. We do not claim to diagnose, treat, or cure any diseases. This podcast is inclusive and welcomes all gender identities. The focus of the program is on biological function, and we will use the term women throughout, but it is referencing physiological and social challenges for biology, not identity. Come as you are, I am happy you're here and welcome all performances of identity. I hope you find something helpful in this show. Welcome back to another episode of the Reproductive Rebel podcast. I am honored to be joined today by Megan Edge. Welcome to the show, Megan.
Thank you so much. I am really looking forward to our conversation today.
I am too. So Megan and I, when we had our screening call, I was like, oh, I wish she lived closer to me. She is totally the kind of energy that I love to surround myself with. So share with our listeners a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Thank you. Who I am a master healer. I've been doing this work, my work as a healer, for the last almost 30 years. And before that, I was also doing this work. I was just doing it differently. What I discovered was that people would come up to me and start telling me all about themselves.
I have the same experience.
Right? In the grocery line, at the bank. It was happening all the time. And I found myself often counseling people and finding connections in their lives that they weren't seeing because they're in their lives, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it occurred to me one day, I could get paid to do this work.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started down this road of training and educating myself and learning all kinds of different healing modalities, learning about myself, doing my own healing work, and then stepping into holding space for other people's healing journeys with a myriad of ways and methods of doing that. And fundamentally, for me, it has always been about how can I empower or help my client feel empowered on their journey so that they can step into their vision of themselves in its highest form, which is the foundation of why I do the work that I do and all the different ways I do it.
Right. Exactly. Well, you find the right tool for the person that's in front of you.
Exactly. And I call it my healer's toolkit. And I feel that for me particularly, it's important that I have lots of different things that I can pull out of that toolkit to meet my client where they are.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also a Gemini, and the best description I've ever heard for a Gemini is a busy mind in many places. And where one person might be able to focus in and just do a thing and become really expert in that thing, I will do that. And then I will ask, what now?
Yes.
What next? What else can I bring in? And so I wear many hats for all the different ways: energy healing, trauma counseling, past life regression, hypnosis. I work with essential oils. I work with plant medicines. I work with nature as medicine. I write. I do podcasts. I teach. There's all of these different ways in which I show up to share and to help in whatever way I can.
I love that. I should have guessed you were a Gemini because my dearest friends, most of my dearest friends are all Geminis, and I love them. Me and my air sign Aquarius over here. I connect with that energy because I love the busy mind, right? Like I celebrate all of the things that it's learned and gives to the world. I see a lot of the way that I work with my clients resonating deeply with you pull the tool for the person in front of you. And I do the same thing. While my foundation is in Eastern medicine, like you treat what's in front of you. You work with what's in front of you. And sometimes people are energetically in a place where they're ready to like push the edge a little bit and go the distance. And then other times you just have to make them feel safe enough in their nervous system that they can like even open that door to think about how can I push that growth edge a little bit. So you guys already see why I was so excited that Megan reached out to the show in order to have this conversation. And one of the really cool, I mean, I think we could have talked forever and we probably can, again, that whole air sign thing. But one of the really juicy topics that came out of our initial conversation is around the feminine experience. And you worded it so beautifully around what is such a threat in the feminine that the masculine feels the need to control the feminine experience. So that is where I would like to take our conversation today, because it was a very thought-provoking screening call for me. I was like, oh, this is a place I haven't gone yet on this show, and I would really like to.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And there's two things that come to mind immediately as we dive into this. First of all, back in the 1800s, there was a law in place in England that no more than two women could gather at the well.
Mm-hmm.
Our ability to come together was restricted by law. Why? Well, I remember when I first learned that, I was in university and my background is in women's studies. Even as a young child, like really little, I could see the discrepancy between the way in which boys were treated and the way in which girls were treated. Mm-hmm. And stamping my little feet and saying, that's not fair. Mm-hmm. And my father saying to me, well, sweetheart, life isn't fair. And I thought, no, that's not good enough. Mm-hmm. I want to understand where this has come from, because it's not innate in us as a species. It's something we've been taught. It's something we've been taught to believe, and it's something we've been taught to accept, both from the masculine and the feminine. Mm-hmm. So little boys are brought up often, and even if the parents have done their darndest to create an environment of fairness in the household, the external environment is going to have influence. So that little boy will be brought up with a deep understanding that his position in society is given more value than the position of his sister. And she will grow up with that as well. She will internalize that. And so her expectation of how she should be treated and what she should expect to receive in return for her work or her worth or whatever, she will lower that standard without being aware that's what she is doing. Mm-hmm. And when I would see that happening around me as a little person, I was constantly aware that it was going on. Mm-hmm. And that awareness at such a young age gave me that impetus to find out why, to start doing the research and to question the assumption that it's always been like this. Mm-hmm. You're an intuitive person. You know when you hear something and your whole body just goes, no, something about this is not right. Yeah. And so the barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen analogy, I was like, I don't think that's how our society has evolved. I don't think we would be where we are today in terms of our evolution, spiritually, physically, emotionally. And some would argue that maybe we're not very evolved yet in any of those areas. But I don't think we would have gotten to where we are if only 50% of the population was involved in the creation of civilization, in the creation of ideas, in the creation of spiritual belief. Now, we can look at cultures today where 50% of the population is shut away, not allowed by law to gather, to drive, to work, to have any kind of sovereignty over her body, their bodies, the female body, we can look at those cultures and we can see the effect of 50% of the population not being allowed to engage in the evolution of that civilization or of that culture. And we can see it as a negative, at least from our perspective. Right? And I think we talked about the war on women. And I said the war on women is alive and well.
Yes.
And it has been for the last probably 2,000 years. In fits and starts, though. When we start to examine her story, as opposed to his story, history, her story, and we go past the narrative that women have always been second-class citizens and we're not as smart as good as, intelligent, blah, blah, blah. When we move past that and we dig for the history, because our history has been rewritten, right? It has been. We know this. This is not a conspiracy. This is real. This is for real. Women's accomplishments, women rulers, empires developed by women pirates, women scientists, you name it.
Yeah.
Our accomplishments have been rewritten or written out to the extent that they can be. When I was in high school, I was studying history. I love history, as you can tell. And the history that I was being taught didn't land for me. We studied British history. I'm in Canada, and we're part of the British Commonwealth. So our history, we studied the British history. So we studied all the kings. All the kings. One queen. Can you guess which queen we studied? We studied Queen Elizabeth I because her reign was so long and so spectacular in all the things that she did. And I'm not saying she was a saint, but her accomplishments in governing the country could not be ignored by the historians. You couldn't write her out of history because her impact was so great. But so many other queens and empresses and leaders and female visionaries, unless they are so magnificent that we can't ignore them, you will not find them in the history books, the mainstream history books that are written by men. The male historian, the male anthropologist, the male archaeologist, they're looking through the lens of their own upbringing and their own experience. So they're not even going to see or look for evidence that women's roles in society have many times and often been far more significant, equal to, or even greater than the roles of the men. That's my rant.
Oh, no. I want to get on that soapbox with you. Move over a little bit, sister. When I was in graduate school, I was working on a thesis for my master's in communication. And I think that was the first time that I became very, very painfully aware that history is only as good as who is telling the story. And you're in Canada, so this probably will land with you, but I was looking at the deportation of the Acadians at the Grand Arrangement, and that this piece of land had gone, for those of you who aren't familiar with the history, this piece of land in now Nova Scotia had gone back and forth between the French and the British for years, decades prior to, and in 1713 came to land in the hand of the Brits. And the British said, you need to swear allegiance to the crown or we're going to kick you out. And the people who were living in that area didn't identify as French or British. They were like, we're our own people and we live here now. And we've developed the area. We've peacefully lived here for several hundred years now. Like, just leave us out of the whole thing. And they were like, sorry, you have to swear or we're going to kick you out. And so they dispersed them. The very famous poem by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, Evangeline Natale of Acadie, was written about that particular event. And they were deposited in English-speaking Protestant ports all along the eastern seaboard of the United States and down as far as Louisiana. This is where our Cajuns come from. So that said, I was doing a ethnographic study where I was looking at the story of Evangeline essentially being told on the US side of the border and the Canadian side of the border, because there are people who identify as Acadian on both sides of the border. And they were trying to essentially, like, what I was trying to prove is that you don't have to have a place that you can point to on a map. It's a performance of identity, is how they were able to maintain their ethnic identity for all of these decades, because I was doing this in the early 2000s. So the part that I found incredibly eye-opening in doing that research is that there was no person who spoke French that had written any account of what had happened. It was only documented by the English-speaking people who were pushing the agenda at the time until 1920. And then there was one book written by a French guy. Still no females in the mix. However, it was really eye-opening for me to be like, wow, like history really is only as good as who is telling the story. And I've gone on to really do a lot more reading around the Gospel of Mary Magdalene that was left out of the Bible. She wrote a gospel, guys, and like it didn't fit their narrative, so they left it out. It's always been this political power play of control.
And the ultimate question becomes, why?
Exactly.
Where does this come from? For all your research, all my research, every moment in history where a woman's experience or a woman's expression or success or achievement has been by future generations of men rewritten or written out. Anytime a woman has been abused, has been pushed down, has been assaulted, has just been even told slightly, you're not good enough, you don't get to earn as much money as I do, you don't get to have fill in the blank because you are a woman. Mm-hmm. Why? Why is the masculine, and let's be so bold as to say, why in general are most men threatened or afraid of the feminine or the women in their lives? And this question isn't only for men to contemplate, it's for us to contemplate as well. Mm-hmm. Why have we allowed, right? Like, how complete has the brainwashing been that we turn on each other as women, competing for the resource of man,
yeah,
and hurt one another? How is it that we have come to believe that we are powerless in ourselves? And we've come to make our own processes something dirty, our menstrual cycle, our giving birth. It was, St. Augustine who said that man is born between excrement and urine, something like that. That's the process of birth. That was how, and the church went, yay, yes, if only we didn't have to come out that way. But, women are the ultimate sinners, and so therefore we are the sinners. And we can go into all of that story as well at some other point. But the fact of the matter is, it's been there for a really long time. Mm-hmm. So what happened historically? This is where I go with this. What happened historically and collectively that the masculine turned on the feminine? Where can we see this when we look at archaeology and we look at anthropology? And can we find examples of other cultures that exist today, or the anthropological and archaeological evidence of cultures in the past, where we see that men and women were in fact acknowledged as equally contributing and equally valuable to the community, or places even where women are exalted, right?
Well, and like some of today can really be traced back to cellular memory, right? Like if you look at the witch hunts in Europe, before that time period, women could own property. Women could have their own money. They could have their own jobs. All of those things could be independent without a partner or they could be married and they still legally were allowed to hold all of those things. And then enter the witch hunts that spread like wildfire across Europe. This isn't even just Salem witch trials here in the US. I'm not far from where that all took place, so that one hits home for me. But we're talking about literally taking women's sovereignty by force. So I do believe that there is a piece of this that is cellular imprint from generations prior of it doesn't feel safe to stand out. It doesn't feel safe to fill in the blank because you were persecuted for that kind of autonomy and independence. And it wasn't long after that time period, or it was during that time period, that no more than 2 women were allowed at the well. Like, they used to have this thing called a gossip when you would birth and you were surrounded by your close-knit female community. And then that was outlawed. And now the word gossip, which used to be a community and sisterhood of women that would support you in essentially some of your biggest physical trials in your life, is now, there's this negative connotation to the word gossip as this thing that like biddies do, and like women as they're like talking crap behind each other's backs. But that's where the sisterhood eroded. Was you were to rat out your sisters in order to not end up hung or burned or drowned yourself. And so it was like the survival thing that created this culture that now, hundreds of years later, we are marinated in, and it's out of control, and social media makes it so much worse.
Yes, it does. And for anyone who's listening or watching, who's wondering, what are we talking about, the witch hunts? What is this? This is a part of the history, again, like what we were saying earlier, that has not been documented. It has been written out. I remember first learning about this, and it's called the Burning Times. And we're looking at over 300 years, 400 years of these happenings by the church. It was called the Inquisition. Some people might be more familiar with that word. It was the Inquisition, and it was predominantly women that they were after, but it was any heretic. It wasn't only the women. It was the men who supported the women. They were also tortured and burned at the stake. And if anyone is interested in learning this history, first of all, it is not for the weak-stomached.
Oh, no.
To learn this history. It is horrific. It is a Holocaust on women in Europe. And it's a black mark on the history of the church, quite frankly. And the church has a lot of those. Sorry for anyone who is church going, and there's beautiful things that happen in the church, but there's a history there. So there's a series of documentaries done by the National Film Board of Canada. The God is Remembered, The Burning Times, and I'm sorry, I can't think of the third one now, but it's a series of 3. Donna Reed is the woman who did these. You can Google it and you can watch these. They're all on YouTube now. Start with the first one. The second one is the harder one to watch because that's the history of what was happening. The third one is a beautiful, what's the right word? Like a beautiful accolade to what is happening now for women who are waking up to their own identity, to their own sovereignty, women who are saying, enough already. No, actually, I'm not buying into this. I do have sovereignty. I do have rights over my body. This is my body. This is my experience. You don't get to tell me any longer what that feels like or how to be in it. So women have done this forever. Let me just be really clear about this. Even though the masculine has attempted to subjugate the feminine, and men who have been brainwashed to treat women this way, and women who've been brainwashed to accept it, there have always been women who've looked out on that landscape and said, no way, not a chance. And every Renaissance in European history, and we're going to talk about European history because that's where this is coming from in this moment. There's lots of other histories that we can look at as well that demonstrate this. But we look at women and we look at European history, and anytime there's been a Renaissance, and there's been a few of them, not just the Renaissance, there's been quite a few throughout the history of Europe and North America. it has been women at the forefront of those Renaissance. And it's been women who have brought that education and that intellectual movement to the forefront until something else has happened that has brought that back down again. And that circles back to the fundamental question that we're asking here is, why? What is it about the power that women have? When women stand in confidence and access their anger, for one thing, about all of this, are we so scary that we have to be controlled? Is there a primal, fundamental, like sexual energy? And the sexual energy is the creative energy that is so terrifying to the masculine that they have to emasculate us all the time, constantly. What is that? And for me, that's a fundamental question. I don't have the answer yet. It's a lifelong searching for that answer to understand. Because here's the thing about history, and here's the thing about evolution. Like there's that saying that history is doomed to repeat itself if we don't remember our history, and we'll just make the same mistakes and invent the same wheel over and over again. So if we can understand from the psychological point of view and that cellular memory point of view, what was the trigger where we went from what we now understand to be a very holistic, agrarian, egalitarian, non-violent cultures where we see in the archaeological record that there were no palisades, there were no walls around these early, we're talking back sort of end of the last ice age. So we're talking about 8 to 12,000 years ago. But we have evidence now in the archaeological record that human beings were in community and in culture and in civilizations in between the last 3 ice ages that the Earth has gone through, that the northern part of the Earth has gone through. So we see that now. We see that our history in civilization goes much further back than 5,000 years. We see it in the geologic record and we see it in the archaeological record. And in those records, what we see is cultures that were not at war with one another. There's no evidence of that. There's evidence of trade. When we look at the frescoes and the paintings and the carvings, we see images of big, busted, beautiful women. And then we see maybe a penis over here, disembodied from the man. We find that in very early civilizations, where we've got the Venus de Milo, beautiful. Where is my Venus? I have her right here. There's my Venus de Milo. Okay? This is a replica of what has been found in a lot of those, those caves. And next to her, we just have an image of a penis. That tells us something. There's a story in there. And it's not to say that men were unimportant at all, but what women did had an importance different than what that society articulated through its art and through its history. So if we want to look at linear time, we can see the shift that happened on the land between cultures that were not killing one another and fighting for resource dominance and subjugating women. And then we see over a very short period of time, about 400 years, that changes. And now we're seeing archaeology where they are defensible communities, linear communities, and women are no longer equal to or above the status of men in those communities. And that starts in some places about 4,000 years ago. Not everywhere, but it's only been in the last 400 years since the beginning of the Inquisition and the spread of that reign of terror, that horror, that women have been so subjugated to the extent that we could not gather. Now, let's be very fair here. There are many different levels of that subjugation. And when I look at my life and what I have been able to do and achieve, and what my daughters are able to do and achieve, and the belief system that we've been brought up in, that is a far cry from our sisters in cultures right now where they can't get a driver's license. They're not allowed to be educated, God forbid. Right? They can't leave their house without being completely covered for their own safety because men apparently can't control themselves.
Allegedly. I don't. I
We're
don't
too
know.
tempting. And I don't mean to dismiss that belief system. But on one hand, I do mean to dismiss that belief system because that doesn't feel healthy to me for the masculine or the feminine.
Yeah.
And certainly, and women in those countries are constantly rising up. They are constantly protesting. They know that this is not okay. But also the brainwashing has been so complete that it isn't the easiest thing. But that whole thing is to go back to the why of it. If we understand what happened, how was it that we went from treating each other well and equally to warring against one another for the next how many thousands of years? And the war machine is a very masculine machine. There have been women warriors, absolutely, 100%. And women leaders who have brought their countries into war and fought wars and all of that. But it is predominantly a masculine machine. If we can understand that, we can start to heal the divide and heal the trauma from an ancestral point of view that exists between men and women. And at that point, we can begin to have healthy relationships and another renaissance, another blooming of humanity, right? And I feel like that's where we're at right now. We're at that cusp.
Oh gosh, I hope so.
And the needle's about to go that way. And many women for many generations have been fighting for this. They've been fighting in the streets. They've been fighting in their homes. They've been fighting in their businesses, in community and commerce. We've all been fighting, and many women have been doing it solo. But many also have been gathering together at the well. Because once we start talking and sharing our experiences, we start to see the patterns, right? And we can talk about the dynamic of an abusive relationship where the man who is in the power position slowly whittles away at the woman's autonomy and sovereignty, if this is his agenda, and separates her from family and separates her from her friends so that she can't tell her friends what's going on in her life to be able to benefit from the support of her sisters and to even have the reflection of one of those friends saying, hang on, sweetheart, this is not okay what you're going through right now. We need to get you out of here. We need to break that vice hold, right? That's not what the man wants, the man who's controlling that situation. He doesn't want that to happen, right? And you can take that relationship between one man and one woman that's abusive like that, and you can apply it to the whole relationship currently between the masculine and the feminine. But when we gather, that's when we start to heal.
That's what we're seeing here in the United States right now, is the control and lack of sovereignty that is taking place. And the fact that we're sitting, and this is why I said, gosh, I hope we are at the brink of this turning point, because I look at all of the sweeping legislation that's happened here in the United States that has taken away, or at the time of this recording anyway, maybe something will be significantly different by the time this episode comes out, but the overturn of Roe versus Wade, now they're looking at legislation in individual states that would make it so that you can't essentially protect yourself, meaning that if there's a health issue with a pregnancy, if you are pregnant, you can't do anything about it. There's conversation about the fact that there may even be checks at state lines so that people can't cross state lines to go to abortion-friendly states. Like, talk about control of autonomy.
Yeah.
And they have now recently said something along the lines of the abortion pill is not safe, and so now it's not approved, and so they're taking it off the shelves. And so, like, your limits for health and access and all of these things have diminished so rapidly. Like, I remember feeling like my soul cracked open and broke when Roe versus Wade was overturned. And now looking at where it is right now, and I have two teenage girls, And it scares the hell out of me in terms of where we are. And I try to remind myself that things have to get pinchy and uncomfortable for change to happen, right? There was always some sort of a conflict right before those renaissance happened. There was always a falling apart so that a new configuration of reassembling could happen. And I'm really hoping that we are on the precipice of a newer, brighter, more intelligent coming together is on the horizon, because this isn't sustainable. Like, when the feminine isn't healthy, honestly, the masculine isn't either. We're designed to be a yin and yang balance of energy for one another. And when the polarity swings too hard in a given direction, disharmony reigns. It doesn't matter whether it's health in a body or it's in a political climate. Like, if it swings too hard in a given direction, there's dis-ease and disharmony for everyone.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So a few years back, I had a radio show podcast called Playing on the Edge Radio with Transformation Talk Radio. And right around the time that the Orange Menace, south of the border, took his first step into office, and there was the whole Me Too movement.
Yes.
And there were protests around the world. Around the world. Millions of men and women took to the streets in protest of his being in office, not just in the US. Of course, no mainstream media outlets covered any of that, because again, if you can't see that there are other people who are also standing up with a voice, your voice isn't as loud. It's smaller because, like we were talking about, it becomes a survival thing, right? The second show that we did was called Bionic Woman, Wonder Woman, Every Woman. And the theme of that show was, what would it be like for women if we grew up with the evidence in front of us of strong, capable, powerful, successful women in the way that men grow up with that evidence presented to them all the time? What would it be like for women? What would it also be like for men to grow up with that evidence that we are equally capable, that we don't need to be fighting one another for the resources of the paycheck or whatever else it is that we're fighting each other on, that it isn't necessary to do that? So if people want to see that episode, they can go to my YouTube channel, which is Megan Edge Healing on YouTube. And so the conversation that I had with my co-host that day was about, like, asking that question, that what if? Because if we can't answer the question, why did this start? When did this start? Why did this happen? We can question the validity of the narrative, and then we can look for the evidence of ourselves as women in history. We can look for the evidence in our own history. We can look for the evidence in Chinese history, in Asian history, in Arabic history. We can look for it in South American history. We can find ourselves in the story. We can find ourselves in the history. And we can look for women today across the globe who are standing up, finding a voice, making a difference, whether they're doing it loudly or softly. When we see the evidence, it's easier for us to say, wow, that could be me. That's right. I'm leaving that abusive relationship. I see it's abusive. I'm leaving it. I'm leaving that job where I'm not respected and I'm not making the money that I should be making. I'm finding my sisters. That's what I'm going to do. And even in the places in the world where it's really hard to do that, because the controls are so intense and the hatred and fear towards the feminine and towards women is so ingrained, there are still women who are standing up, and there are men who are standing up as well. There are men who are saying, I don't want this for my daughters. I don't want this for my wife. I don't want this for my sons.
Yeah.
Right? And if we get to the well, and let's say we've now got 20 women at the well, what if we were to also invite in some of those men who have woken up, who are awake, right? The healthy, healed masculine, and say, we would like you to be a part of this conversation, right? That's the moving forward part. And we're not meant to do it by ourselves. Like, women aren't meant to take over the world. That's not what we're here to do. And if men are afraid of that, well, you know what? Check yourself. Give your head a shake. We don't want to take over. We got enough on our plates.
Mm-hmm.
Fundamentally, for me, when I look at this whole conundrum, this whole conversation, what I want is to be treated with respect.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be valued for what I bring. I don't want to be a man.
Mm-hmm.
Men are men. I love that they're men. That's great. Be a man, but be a fucking man. I'm sorry.
Yes. No. I swear
And-
for emphasis and clarity over here. No,
and
it's true.
And same for women. Like, let's pull up our big girl panties
Mm-hmm.
and stand in our power,
Mm-hmm.
not power over,
No.
power with, because the world needs that
Mm-hmm.
right now. And I think it's been crying for it for 4,000 years. Long enough. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if we were to close this episode with a final thought, Megan, because I know it's so hard to like reduce all of that juiciness down into one pot, because like I just look at where we're at in the state of the world right now, and I want so much better for my daughters and for my granddaughters. And this is where I really hope that this show, Reproductive Rebel, is providing that voice that people need to be like, oh, yeah.
Yeah. I love that that's the name, Reproductive Rebel, because right now it is a rebellion. We are being rebellious. Right?
Yeah, we have to be.
Brats. We're being brats in a really positive, wonderful way.
Mm-hmm.
And final message is, there's so many,
I know.
many messages that I have, but I think the most important one in this moment is stop turning on one another. Women, stop turning on one another, right? Stop fighting over that man, that masculine. Turn towards one another. We need to heal the feminine. We can't do it for them.
Mm-hmm.
We can't do it for the men. The men are going to have to figure it out themselves. They're going to have to do it for themselves. But maybe we can mentor that by reclaiming what we have allowed to be taken away from us. So that's reclaiming our confidence, reclaiming our sovereignty, understanding our history. It's so important, and it's so empowering for women to recognize that the story we've been told is not true. Barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen is not true for every woman. It has been for many women, but that's not our history. That's a circumstance that we allowed, that men allowed. It's a circumstance that was created, right? And I have nothing against being barefoot in a kitchen. I'm barefoot in my kitchen a lot. And I have nothing against being pregnant. And I loved being home with my daughters when they were little. I loved that. So this is not against the traditional values that are part of that narrative. It's about lifting those values and having them be seen as equally important in the theater that we've created. So let's pay that woman to be home with her children, giving her children that amazing foundation. Let's help her do that. And the woman who wants to go to work, let's help her do that. Yeah.
It's for the benefit of the entire society.
Yeah.
To support that.
It is. It is. Power over doesn't work. We've seen that. We know that. Look at what's happening in the world right now with power over.
Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your wisdom with all of our listeners. This is a topic I could talk so long about, but I'm so grateful because voices like yours, I think, are so incredibly powerful in the conversation. We need to have more conversations like this one to open people's eyes, because I think some of it is we've just started to accept that this is the way that it is. And even for somebody who is a reproductive rebel and like bucks the system, like I have days where I feel hopeless because it feels like the deck is stacked against you. I'll never forget the male boss who goes, "Oh, you negotiated remarkably well for yourself." And I looked at him and I said, "I negotiated what I was worth." And he had nothing else to say about that. But, you know, like I shouldn't have to defend that I'm making as much as the dude sitting on the other side of the cubicle from me. And I was doing twice the work anyway. It's like, what?
Exactly.
So these are so important, these kinds of conversations. And I'm just so grateful for your energy and your time today, Megan. If you want to reach out to Megan, her contact information is going to be in the show notes. And until next time, everybody. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Reproductive Rebel. Reproductive Rebel is recorded by certified peri-steam hydrotherapist and acutonics practitioner, herbalist, and Chinese nutritional therapist, Adrienne Irizarry of Moon Essence LLC. If you are interested in setting up an appointment for one-on-one support, ordering from our store, or checking out our course offerings, visit our website at moonessence.life. Be sure to subscribe to our newsletter and get insider information on upcoming events and offerings. Join the conversation. Like and follow us at MoonEssenceMe on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn. Your voices make this program possible. Thank you all for your continued support.